The story is called Procedure in Plain Air by Jonathan Lethem. It's written a couple years ago. Later, after the men in jumpsuits had driven up and begun digging the hole, Stevik would remember that the guy on the bench beside him had been gazing puzzledly into the cone of his large coffee and had tried to interest him in the question of whether the cafe's brew aftertasted of soap or not. This day was gray, with heavy portents of rain. Not the best for sitting on the coffee shop bench, but the interior of the cafe had become insufferable in all ways to Stevik. The shop's ambiance and fancy name, its well-programmed iPod and fake industrial chairs and tables and counters succeeding too completely, the room seething with overdressed, disheveled types, nerve-wrackingly web surfing or doing the real-world equivalent with eye orbits throughout the room, every last one of whom made him feel mossy, corroded, replaced. Add to that the danger of running into his ex, Charlotte, and he never even glanced within hope of a seat. He didn't want one. Just black to go. He was an outdoor bencher. He'd take his chances with the others here, backs to the shop's window, and if rain drove them off, he'd have it to himself. Nor did he care to consider whether the coffee tasted of soap or not. He was getting his morning thrill on, his eye-opener, and this place, besides being on the right corner of the right block for him to stumble in, made a fine, joltingly strong concoction strictly from the addict's point of view. It could taste of lysergic acid or oysters for all he cared. Maybe every cup of coffee he'd ever drunk had tasted of soap, so he couldn't discern soap from coffee. Who knew? Stevik, meant to be job hunting, wasn't. Too generous severance had blurred his motivation in the months when it would have mattered. Now, season slanting to Memorial Day, the flag of Manhattan's office life was at half-mast until September. So Stevik was propped like a morning crow on that bench when the truck arrived. His front row seat recalled him to memories of childhood puppet shows, of gazing up at the slotted stage from which Punch and Judy and their like protruded. The soapy coffee theorist was curled over some device, brow knit, thumbs deep in a text message campaign, making Stevik the only witness to this disembarkment of the truck's occupants. They parked, apparently heedlessly, in the space in front of a hydrant, but without coming nearer than 3 feet to the curb. Cars slowed to pass. Stevik doubted that a garbage truck could have made it through. Surely a temporary placement, a compromise then. The vehicle was an ungainly, bolted iron thing resembling some reconfigured laundry or diaper truck, not massive like those used for the transport of money, but solid enough in its way. 2 men in jumpsuits popped out of the cab, and within a minute had orange traffic cones up to claim the territory that extended a few feet behind the truck, as well as between it and the curb. One contemplated the hydrant, and then Riley topped it off with a cone, which perched there like a dunce cap. It made an effective preemption of any indigenous neighborhood protest. An easy trump. The men in jumpsuits seemed to have some official function, even if their truck was unmarked. The tools with which the 2 men dug the hole were notably quiet and efficient. After first marking a square of asphalt with yellow spray paint, using a bandsaw of daunting size and intensity, they carved the blacktop along the lines of drying paint. At this point, Stevik's might have been the only eyes attending. Perhaps these activities had drawn distractive, unsustained glances from a passing postal worker or a nanny. Certainly nobody emerged into the chill morning from the cafe's interior, where those not obliviously earbudded were likely hunkered in routine annoyance against the saw's zip, much as they'd be for a passing siren, or the clunk of a trunk's axle in a porthole. Nothing off the ordinary urban decibel scale. The soap complainer had wandered away when Stevik wasn't looking. The jackhammers, though, drew complaint. Several exasperated cafe denizens packed their laptops and muttered in the loose direction of the truck and its jumpsuited operatives as they fled the scene, like birds flitting to another treetop and no more courageous. One of the cafe's counterpersons, a chubby guy in an apron, seeing business spooked, made a more forthright protest, even shaking his fist, but the small dimension of the task blunted his protest. By the time the jumpsuited pair had ignored the counterperson for a minute or two, minute smiles perhaps rippling their lips, or was this an effect of the device's vibration? They were shifting the jackhammer back into the truck in favor of shovels and picks, with which they deftly cleared the hole of shattered black chunks. Stevik nodded consolation to the counterperson who, after all, poured his soapy coffee 45 minutes ago. What remained of it was